Printer Games, podcast about what's new and awesome in 3D printing for gaming. I'm your host, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by
Kristen Sowers, also known as Seventh Mastery.
Kristen. Have you had some fun projects lately?
I have. I've actually been getting ready to do a couple big physical things. I mentioned that I'm going to be probably traveling this summer and hitting some game stores across the country. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be taking some DTL stuff and also be taking some Dungeons and Laser stuff and trying to kind of synthesize a little bit of the stuff that I've been working on all into one big thing. But I've been researching community-made modifiers to Dungeons and Lasers. So there's like, because Dungeons and Lasers is module, is modular stuff, and it has really good, easy to use like a peg system, and it's not hard for anybody who knows anything about modeling minis to figure out how to use those peg systems, either with the almost exact same shape, or something that will work in the same holes. And so we're seeing like caps and crenellations. Like I love Dungeons and Lasers, and this is not a paid promotion from them, though. Hit me up if you want to support my TikTok, Dungeons and Lasers. Anyway, I will definitely though say that as much as I love it, there are things about it that are a little wonky, like the roofs. I don't know if you've ever seen the roofs. You have to do some unusual things to get the roofs on the buildings to click right. The later versions got better, but there are things where you have to like nick off part of a piece to get it to go under a certain edge. And if you do it wrong, it looks like there's a hole in the side of it. It just kind of ruins the whole look of it if you're not just, hand waving things, right? But that modification, there's been some people who've printed new versions that are a little bit better and a little more well put together. And I think, a little bit of printing could take that and up level the whole set, because I've already got a lot of it. I've already painted a lot of it, and it travels really, really well. The other thing that's nice about it is with those base plastic pieces, resin details can be used to kind of up level everything. And resin, what's the word you use? There's a word you use for all the little like dressing stuff. Greeblies, that's the one. Yeah, so that you're using the greeblies to like, really kind of push that look up and make it look really sweet. But that packing your greeblies and making sure the resin that's fragile is safe is very easy compared to packing your whole building or whatever made of resin, right? And obviously then there's FDM and whatever, but we know how well I do with big FDM projects, don't we?
Oh, sure. It's gonna be a grand old time.
Yeah. So like, that's kind of the one thing I do, or that I'm doing. And then the other thing, as I'm researching this, because I'm seeing a lot of synergy between the two ideas, is that for Christmas, one of my friends, who I love dearly, thank you, Mikey, gave me a ton, and I mean a ton, of the physical props, especially the Nolzur's Deluxe Wild Bee on the Witchlight stuff. And I want to run a like top tier, high end physical props Wild Bee on the Witchlight, which is ironic because it is one of the few modules you can do supposedly without ever getting in combat. But my experience was that was not the case when we played it. So, murder hobos will be murder hoboing. But yeah, I have a whole huge physical rig for that already that I really want to like kind of push all the way up. So I'm looking at, some of the cast and play sets for the carnival and the circus themes. I think, was it Great Grimoire also has a really cool carnival set that circus theme. Kind of want to get some more of those stuff. Anybody else has any good recommends about like things that might work? I would love a good Displacer Kitten mini. Because if you are familiar with the storyline, there is a missing Displacer kitty you have to find.
Oh, I know that there's been a ton of Displacer kittens made, so you all have lots of material to recommend from.
Right, which then, of course, segues to my third project, which is my ever-expanding ridiculous need to have a physical print setup for Magic the Gathering D&D, because they're getting so intertwined now as the lore continues to mix and mingle, and we see little things show up from one to another, that I'm really enjoying running games that have those features, and I would like to have some more physical minis to draw on from that. So I'm looking, especially like I really want to run an Ixalan game. I think I've mentioned that before. So I need some good dinos, preferably with, some of the Mesoamerican vibes. I know. It's almost like if I just took the lizards off of your dinos. I would be
Mhm.
60 to 70% there already. I just have to find some good matching writers.
Yeah, I've got lots of recommendations for you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Artisan Guilds did a whole set of dinos and Amazons,
Mm-hmm.
also that is worth looking into.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people we'll talk about today, Wargames Atlantic, has lots of fun stuff you can play with in that camp too.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm headed, is a lot of little things to expand existing physical products, is I guess probably what I would be saying, which is one of the
Mhm.
things that we don't talk about a lot, because we either think about, here's the one big thing, do the thing, FDM stuff, or we talk about these STL releases. But there's so many Greedlies and little tiny
Mhm.
expansion products, especially community made stuff that's oftentimes free, that's
Mhm.
just incredible. And the content's just all over the place, and it's kind of also a little bit of a mini game just to search it all down and find it, right?
Mhm.
So I'm pretty hype. What do you got coming down the project pipe?
Right now, I am back to doing a lot of work printing,
Mm-hmm.
which is unfortunately a bigger part of my life than I thought it would be. But a whole lot of printing up a bunch of stuff to send to like little game clubs to give away for their game events, which is fills me with all the warm fuzzies. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, small local community, I can support you. I'm going to make it rain minis officially because I'm allowed to.
I'm going to make it rain minis. I like that.
Yeah. And then also I need to do a couple of new demo sets for just running the games and teaching the games, and because UKGE is coming up, and I guess I now measure my life by conventions.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I've lived that life. I've definitely lived that life. Well, with when I was doing my Kickstarter post follow up and stuff, man, yeah, the convention circuit can be real. I'm both jealous and terrified for you all at the same time.
yeah, but I'm really looking forward to UKGE for two big reasons.
Yes.
One is UKGE is supposed to be like this really awesome miniature convention that like has a massive indie scene, because there's so much like in and around that, like it's just southwest of Nottingham, like a
Mm-hmm.
half-hour drive from Nottingham. So
Right.
like the community of independent modelers and XGW people who have like small projects going is like
Mm-hmm.
massive there. So there's like a whole bunch of really cool stuff to get into, like a bunch of like really small press people that have like that have made like custom silicone molds they're pouring molten tin into, and they're going to do 100, and that's all of this that'll ever exist. And like really cool projects that I'm wanting to check out. Also
Mm-hmm.
afterwards I'm just going to take a straight vacation,
Nice.
kick it around the UK for a week,
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of enjoy and get all those vibes in and recharge my my dungeon master batteries, because definitely wanting to run some games again. I miss being a game master.
Yeah, you mentioned your DM chops are itching a little bit, so I'm excited because if I get to play in your game like you're playing in my game, I certainly wouldn't mind that. But if it's a local game, it's fine. I won't be filled with too much sadness or despair.
I don't think this is a binary situation.
Mm.
But beyond that, I'm also wanting to print a bunch of cool terrain, because right now my fantasy terrain stockpile is strong. Like
Mhm.
I could build just about any kind of fantasy board you wanted right now. If you
Right.
had some like super niche thing, I'd have a little bit of trouble. But any of the traditional fantasy battlescapes you'd want, odds are I could put a close
Your
facsimile of
forests,
it
your
together.
runes, your
Yeah,
deserts.
your
Mhm.
cities, your
Mhm.
yeah. I can even do like frosty cities and things like that if I needed to.
Mhm.
But
But
my sci-fi game is weak. My
yeah.
sci-fi game consists of one sci-fi tower,
Mhm.
and 27 storage containers.
Just storage containers.
I was trying to get the Ender 3 tuned in, and I had the storage container STL all sliced up, so I just
Sure.
kept running it again and again and again and again and again and again.
Well, also a nice one to do though, because if they're beat up or rusted, look weird, then
Mhm.
the print as you're dialing it in, it's
Yeah.
okay if there's some glitches. It's fine because you're just gonna like rough it up anyway.
And it's like two different varieties. One of them from the Titan Forge sci-fi welcome pack, that really cool sci-fi storage container,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is like more octagonal, almost Star Warsian,
Kind of like
and
an
it's
energy cell or something, or
yeah, and it's like just a little bit smaller. So like like when I have set up like just some skirmish maps with them, and it's you get a lot of variety with just stacking these two different blocky storage container shapes with some, and then I can pull in some of the fantasy ruins because they're close enough to just ruins that it doesn't matter, and it looks like your typical Warhammer 40k table at that point.
yeah, I've got I want to say they're DTL. Not DTL. Geez, I keep saying DTL. This is lasers, and that are just concrete rebar, but like they're just enough that you can almost see them as fantasy if you want. Or they go post-apocalypse or sci-fi, and it's like, wow, those are really versatile. I like that. So yeah, I can see a few ways that would work.
We've already got a lot of people in chat. Troy, hey, I'm wearing the Old Navy hat. No, this is the Gap. This is the hat I got from the Gap. Bear and Stream Daddy are in chat. Hello. Bear approves of Stompy Dinos. I also approve of Stompy Dinos.
And we also have
Star Winds says, nice shirt, Perrin. Wearing the same one right now. Awesome. I do like this shirt. It's the Honor Among Thieves D&D shirt. It's fun.
Though that is definitely not the chunky red dragon on there. It's just a generic.
It is absolutely not. It is absolutely not. Yeah. I want the chunk dragon in my life so much. I still have not found. I should just print Titan Forge's chunk dragon. Honestly,
I actually have already printed and given away a couple with the creator's blessings, and they weren't for profit, but I've given away quite a few of those already.
Nice.
Embershod, is that his name? Embershod?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Not...
Lava Bing's also in chat. Hello, Lava Bing.
I also see Valkyrie Ashes here as well.
And then, of course, like the entire rest of the nerdy planet, I binge watched Fallout.
I haven't done it yet. I heard that the first scene with Dogmeat is pretty rough, and I was like, I don't need that right now. So
it is. Yeah, it's a rough. It's a rough show. It's got lots of the trigger warnings, people. It's got lots of them.
But yeah, I'll get around to it.
But speaking of Fallout, right now this will lead into my topic. As a well-timed Humble Bundle, Modiphius has released their Fallout Humble Bundle. Now, part of this is because Modiphius is about to release a new version of their Fallout skirmish game called Fallout Factions, which is compatible with their existing Wasteland Warfare. Factions is sort of like a much more smaller scale fight, and then Wasteland Warfare for like a bigger tables, and they're both cross compatible, so that's good news. And they also have like a RPG expansion for Wasteland Warfare, which is not it's a weird way to do that, but like I guess you're following that roots, like the D&D roots. You start with a war game, and then
I guess so. Actually,
an RPG.
Not a lot of people think about that anymore, but it did start that way. So yeah.
So if you wanted to get into Fallout right now, or for any amount of 3D printing, this is like the perfect place to start. Because for like $18, you can get everything in the bundle. And that includes all the rulebooks for, like, I don't know about all the rulebooks, like a bunch of rulebooks for the game. All the vault sets, so you can build like interior vault maps, some of the vehicles, and a bunch of the exterior ruins, so you can like build your, like, my favorite's like the red rockets, because like that says Fallout, like ruined farmhouse. I can get a bunch of ruined farmhouses anywhere else, but red rocket, and of course all of this is like officially licensed. This isn't like proxies or fan art or anything like that. This is all officially licensed Fallout stuff. $18 gets you everything you need to get started. Only one playable miniature, which is a vault dweller.
Interesting.
So you need to provide your miniatures from your plethora of other sources. But Fallout is like really as a setting, Fallout lends itself to kit bashing, extremely kit bashing friendly to make your custom crew.
That's fair.
Yeah.
We have a question. So go ahead.
What's the
We had a
question?
question in chat was, speaking of sci-fi, do Patreon tribe designers who do both have you considered breaking sci-fi and fantasy into different tiers? Can do one instead of getting both. You know what? Actually, from my understanding, most of the ones I am familiar with now do this. Like I know Arcvillain splits them. Cyberforge and Titanforge are different. You guys are one of the few that does combined, right?
Yeah, OPR still does the combined sci-fi fantasy, and we haven't done a price bump.
Right. Yes, stupid good value. Same with actually Epic, I believe, right? No, Epic does have a separate sci-fi tier now.
Yeah. Gamic has a separate tier too. I'm finding that most people do the split. It's very, there's not a bunch of people that do one sci-fi and fantasy. A lot of times, when you're, especially with how crowded the market got, like finding your niche and sticking to it was like the method of success for a lot of people. So trying to spread out is sometimes risky. I'm not saying don't do it, but do it smart. Like, and anytime
it's
you're
also
growing your business, grow it smart.
It's also interesting in the gaming space. If you're not Warhammer adjacent, sci-fi never keeps up with fantasy. This is something I don't know why.
It's
just
because there isn't a sci-fi. We have all agreed that, well, for some reason, there's this amalgamation of genre we call fantasy that can encompass a lot of subgenres that we are all happy playing together in the big kitchen sink a lot of times. Like sometimes we go hyper specialized and you want your low fantasy, or sometimes you want to go with fantasy based on different cultures or original cultures. And sometimes you go fandom specific, but a lot of Tolkien-esque fantasy and I guess dungeon fantasy has become kind of a shortcut name that a lot of people can design for, and it's got a lot of very flexible space, but it also combines very well together in ways. And with sci-fi, that ain't true. You've got post-apocalypse, you got cyberpunk, you've got your war Grimmahordes, you've got space opera, you've got a billion different fandoms. And the second you touch on fandoms, then the details start to matter. Like the Jedi needs to look like a Jedi. The bridge of the Star Trek crew needs to look like a Starfleet bridge. You can do a little bit of creativity, but then like the specifics start mattering and the licensing starts mattering, or the artist that is creating compatible material needs to make sure that the compatible material fits the theme of the fandom they're designing for. And not a lot of this cross pollinates very well, because the game that would makes a cool Star Trek bridge combat kind of game does not mix well with a post-apocalyptic fantasy, except for maybe for an episode or two, but not like it's for a regular ongoing campaign. And those audiences are looking for completely different things. So it is infinitely harder to do quote unquote sci-fi.
Right. Troy is also adding on, just hate throwing away sci-fi every month, so I don't go for patrons to include them. Troy, I'm going to try to give you a tip, and this may help and it might not. Look at the minis in the fantasy side and think, would I have paid for this by itself? Because adjusting your perspective to this fantasy thing is about worth the $10, then the other stuff's just free. And I know that's a weird thing, a trick to play on yourself. And I know you're going to probably be cost valuing out per mini or whatever. But my advice, and this is apparent, we talk about this all the time on the show, I think, would I have bought these two minis at their singles price? And if you look at the page of the thing, you can check out their singles for the rough same size and detail. And you're going to realize that people usually mark up a single mini to $5-10, especially if it's like a large mini, it's like $10. If their ask is $10 and you would have bought that thing separately later, then maybe still just buy it, even if there's sci-fi minis you're not going to use, you know?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, do you what makes you most comfortable? But I completely agree with Kristen. Like, look at what you like, because there's lots of stuff in like single genre stuff that I won't use.
Right.
And so I look at any given month and I go, are there two minis in this set I would print? And if the answer is yes, it was worth it.
Right. Well, and then, again, we'll just throw out kit bashing. You never know when you're going to want that thing. Like, I remember, I think we did Barrier Peaks. We did a reprise of it recently. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lightsaber in here. I know there's a lightsaber in here. They don't call it a lightsaber, but it's a lightsaber. I was like, somebody in the party is going to be running around with a lightsaber eventually. And I'm like, okay, do I have the, identifiable lightsaber that we can't call lightsaber mini? No. So suddenly became, what kit bashing from those sci-fi sets became the answer, right? So.
I mean, or cocktail stick.
Who are you?
What?
Cocktail stick.
Clear plastic cocktail stick from the food market, cut and sanded on one end, glued to the end of a sword hilt, is absolutely a lightsaber and more convincing than most 3D prints.
I don't like it.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, go on.
So now that I was looking at that, I was like, oh no, is Modiphius just like this? Usually when things are available on Humble Bundle, especially in 3D printing, it usually is like stuff from creators who ain't trying no more. There's a few exceptions to that. The Fat Dragon Games has been around forever, keeps doing humbles with their old stuff, but they keep pumping out new stuff. But like usually it's like some of the same creators, like some of the stuff that was on some of the defunct websites that just we don't use anymore, like some of the early paid stuff, or some of the more beloved but out of the business now companies, or not doing as big a volume are there. And I won't name names because I don't want to denigrate any given creator there. So I was like, oh no, is Modiphius doing badly? And then I pulled up their stuff and I'm like, nope, they're still putting stuff out. They're still releasing games and they're still releasing 3D printable stuff for the game. So I was like, what's going on? So we talked a whole bunch about 3D printing companies and how they're doing, because that's like kind of our bread and butter topics for episodes. What the companies that weren't 3D printing and came into the market, the ones that we've kind of celebrated as proof that this is a legitimate industry now, everybody, they're recognizing how much this is going to change. How has that worked out for them? How are they still doing? So I went to the big ones, and let's start with Modiphius. Modiphius is not releasing regularly. They release sporadically. Basically, they release a bunch of STLs to support whatever physical games they're releasing. And they're big license. So their Fallout stuff is expensive. But not all of their stuff is expensive. So I found it really interesting and I have to guess licensing is having a humongous part of how this pricing is done.
I'm sure it does.
So Modiphius, they do the Fallout sets. That's some of the more expensive stuff and some of the first stuff we saw. But they also have been doing the Star Trek sets, and that stuff is dirt cheap. Like it is like standard pricing for minis, like $5 for a hero, $10, $12 for a set, $20 for a big set. Like they're not doing a monthly a tribe or anything. They just release stuff on My Mini Factory and also on their own website. And they're still putting stuff out there on the fairly regulars. New stats have come out for Elder Scrolls. They've actually started putting some of the war bands for the Elder Scrolls called ARM game out here, which is another one of their skirmish war games. The Fallout stuff is mostly terrain and support material, but for the Star Trek, it's like bridge crews and like licensed like main characters like Spock and stuff are printed. Lore is on here. Captain James T. Kirk is on here. Captain Picard is a printable character, like officially licensed for $5 freaking. You can print Picard, like an official licensed Picard.
Pretty sweet, actually.
And so they're still doing so. Like this is it's working for them. So glad to see this stuff is still coming out. It's like I said, it's sporadic and slow. It just matches up with whatever their physical releases are, but nice. Good to see that that's still going. So I was like, who else like was really big and jumped into the game early? Wargames Atlantic. We
you mentioned them
Wargames Atlantic jumped into things. And they have still been firing on all cylinders.
Well, they had massive releases too, right? Like
Yeah,
big old
their
releases.
sets are like hundreds of minis a
Yeah.
month. It's stupid how much like just minis per dollar. It's one of the best rates going, but it's also like the most random stuff. It's like what you'll get Roman Legion soldiers and warthogs and space cyborgs with tentacles right next to not 40k ground troopers, right next to skull scorpions and sci-fi oni, like big old giant magic ogres. Um, they've got like it's historical stuff mixed with fantasy stuff, mixed with sci-fi stuff, and they're still basically going through with their normal strategy of all the cool stuff they want to do. They make it as a 3D printing kit, and the best of the 3D printing kits, the most popular 3D printing kits, get turned into actual kits, because turning a kit into an actual kit costs thousands and thousands of dollars, because
Right.
they use hips, so they have to tool a mold, and there's only so many of those factories in the world that can even make those molds. It takes days of tooling to make a single mold for a model.
And you say hips, that's
High
for
impact polystyrene.
okay. There we go.
What you consider when you buy a model kit for Warhammer or a model car or a Gundam, that's the kind of plastic it's made out of.
Right. Right.
And for that, you need metal molds, because that high impact is part of the game and making that. And the advantage of doing hips is that it is pennies for a whole sprue of models once you actually make the very expensive mold. And they've just been like slamming it out. Like they got these really cool halfling cavalry on like badass ponies. They've got a generic T-Rex. They've like usually people go like kind of cutesy with the halflings and stuff, but they were just like, no, we're just gonna make them look awesome and cool fighters and not lean into the cute. They got these rhino men stuff, like really cool fantasy rhinoceros in heavy armor with gigantic hammers and like a billion poses. Like, what? Who even thinks that this kit's a good idea? But it's awesome that they did. Like
someone made it.
Stuff that's just never going to come out is like from a traditional like they are going to the not safe answer. They're not copying any given game system or any given restriction. They're just putting it all out there, and then the stuff that sticks to the wall, they increase. Like this is basically getting us to pay for their R&D.
Right.
And it's a brilliant idea, and I love it. Also, all their kits are cross compatible and in the same scale. So you can take these orc heroes and then line it up with the winter age, the White Death Winter Sci-Fi Deathfield set to give them AKs. And suddenly you've got orcs with AK-47s and laser cannons.
There you go.
So this is what I just kind of, I'm getting excited about it, but it's just like, this makes no sense, and I love it. It's crazy and dumb in all the best ways, and please to goodness keep doing it.
I mean, I hope it's being, I mean, it feels like it's being profitable for them. They're keeping at it. And like you said, they're basically doing this to suss out what's going to sell physically. So it's not a bad idea.
They're sitting at just shy of 800 tribers, paying them $10 a month. So it's not nothing.
No, it's probably covering a lot of their art outlay. So
yeah. It's enough to pay the artist to jazz up this stuff, and then you can take that and you know, make the ones that are successful or the ones that are popular get turned into real kits, and that's when the real money comes from.
Right.
Yeah. So who else was doing cool kits, or who came in? I remember we did a big thing, Privateer Press. They're coming into 3D printing in a completely different way. Their War Machine Mark IV, completely 3D printed manufacturing. And I'm like, how'd that work out? Because they had a bumpy start. Like
Yeah.
when the first set
With some
came out at
quality
Gen
issues,
Con,
right? Some
there was some
concerns.
quality
Yeah.
issues. And the quality issues were mostly a false alarm. People were
Mhm.
like, uncured resin. And it was like, no, it was actually just extra cured alcohol.
Right.
There was nothing really wrong with these prints. They're completely safe. They're no, this just a
They
little
just
bit of
looked a
panic,
little
but it was a
weird.
bad PR hit.
Yeah.
And well, Privateer Press is Mark IV is out. They're actually having trouble fulfilling the orders at this point. There's so many
Oh,
orders.
well, that's
So
good. Question
and the
mark.
kits look great. They're
Yeah.
like really cool kits, hundreds and hundreds of models. That's the one cool thing is like they were able. I think this technology lets you very rapidly make a very large range
Mm-hmm.
because with 3D printing manufacturing, you can basically print to demand.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing A Song of Ice and Fire release strategy for their game, which I kind of dig, and I kind of think it's maybe the right way to do releasing war games, especially if your name is not Games Workshop.
When
Which
you
is they
say that, yeah.
release.
Okay, go ahead. You're explaining it. Let's make sure. Go on.
Which is where you release a starter army
Mm-hmm.
that you buy, and then you release expansion packs to
Mm-hmm.
add to that army, so that like getting into the game, it's very focused. It's very, you know what you're doing, and you have a clear upgrade path. And then by the time you start wondering, but maybe I don't want this particular war jacket, at that point in time, you're deep enough into the hobby trumpet that you are informed enough to make the right decisions for buying like specific models and in specific kits and stuff like that. But by focusing on big box set, this is the cool army with steampunk lightning dwarves. Big box
Right.
set, this is easy to get started. And then expansion packs is easy paths forward into the game.
So kind
Star
of,
Wars Legion is doing it,
yeah.
Shatterpoint's doing it, Marvel's doing it, Song of Ice and Fire is doing it this way. It's a very smart path. And these are 3D printed models. They do not sell the STLs and have no interest in doing that.
Right.
And they are being produced by Print Farm for them, and it is working out. Well,
Except for
the part where
fulfillment.
they've hit a bottleneck and the ability to deliver. But
Right.
Hey, I'm actually I was having like a back and forth with Fawhammer about this,
Mm-hmm.
and like my opinion is that the gaming market for small and medium manufacturing, 3D printing manufacturing starts to make a lot of sense in a way that a lot of the other ones don't, especially now that printers are getting very fast.
Right. Right.
Extremely fast, and you have these print stacking techniques to get a whole lot of models out and take advantage of that speed. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you can fill the entire Z height of a Elegoo Saturn Ultra 4 in 2.5 hours,
Right.
why wouldn't you stack that to the moon? I can't get to the printer every 3 hours regularly.
Mm-hmm.
My print sits there for hours sometimes between prints.
Yeah. You were showing me some pictures. They're definitely like getting to that point again, because we used to do this when we both first started, right?
Yeah.
But now with the quality increases, it's becoming a lot less risky.
Yes, that's the thing. The risk of stack printing is that when you have a failure, it takes out the tower. And so you lose more than just the models. So it's kind of like why I don't recommend crowding an FD on build plate with a whole bunch of models if you don't need to, because there's no time savings there.
Right.
Except for between prints. And for most hobbyists, that's not a concern. Like it starts becoming a concern once you start entering print farm level production.
Mm-hmm.
And again, stacking doesn't make sense for a hobbyist, but it does start to make sense if you're entering print farm level production, and you need to like juggle 5 of these printers on shifts,
Or you're trying to make a really big army
in a big damn hurry.
big damn hurry.
Getting ready for these conventions, I've sometimes wished I had this thing. I'm borrowing friends' printers and like loading the build plates up and swapping them, and getting my little sister to swap them when I can't, and all that jazz.
Right.
Fun stuff.
But now you could do this once more.
And that's not the last of the. That is not the last of the big companies that have entered the market.
Oh,
There's one more name that I think is pretty obvious. Mantic.
Oh, okay.
who just released the Halo game.
That's
The
true.
Halo game, and the Halo game is fun.
Mhm.
It's just the same as Dead Zone, which is a fun game.
So it's basically just a skinned version of Dead Zone?
Yeah, with some custom rules to make it feel like Halo. Like your units respawn, you have overshields that recharge at the end of the round, things like that like lean into it. But it is basically a skinned version of Dead Zone, which is a great game. So sure, go
Yeah, I
for
was
it.
about to say that's not always a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of like how many people do we know that use 5e to simulate all sorts of other genres, even though it's just supposed to be core fantasy D&D. So.
And they have been offering the Mantic Vault for the past year. So it's been a year of the Mantic Vault. And this is a situation where I know how they're doing, or at least how they say they're doing, because I got to talk with them at Adepticon about it.
Oh, Adepticon, okay.
Yeah. And they say it's doing fine, and they're doing exactly what they wanted to. And their strategy is different from everybody else's strategy. If you look at their strategy, this is definitely... this Mantic Vault is not meant as a generic source of models. Now, you can certainly do that. The price is pretty on the cheap side. Like, you can get it as low as like $5 USD a month. So like, it's fair. It's not a very expensive subscription.
Right.
And they do release enough models that if you just want cool models, sure, you can get them here. But what they do is this is meant to be a supplement to people who play their physical games.
Right.
So it's things like all of the ships in like, if you want to play Armada and you've been subscribed to Mantic Vault, you have every Armada ship. You can play fantasy boats
all day
and everything all day. They even went on My Mini Factory and released like a frontier. So like, you can even get the game rules digitally and everything you need to play and tokens and all that jazz. If you want to play fantasy boats, you covered. Kings of War is probably their biggest game, and it's the one that gets a lot of support here. And what they do there is very interesting, and they basically kept it up where they don't release the cheap kits. You're not going to get your orcs here. You're not going to get your orc warriors, your Saurian spearmen, your things. They want you to still buy those plastic kits, and those plastic kits are cheap as crap. So sure, I'll pay you $20 for 30 orcs, whatever. I'm not going to complain about that. But what they do offer is the more elite stuff that they that because of how things are produced ends up costing a lot of money on their website. So things like the Reapers, that's not the Reapers, Soul Flayers. Well, I don't know. I'm forgetting some of the names of these models, or the Yetis, or like big resin cast pieces that they had to offer in resin and were expensive and difficult to produce. You can print those at home and like save yourself a ton of money by doing it that way. Also, upgrades, things that would be upgrade sprues to like take your halfling warriors and turn them into halfling veterans. They'll give you the upgrade parts to do that in here, as well as enough unique stuff. And also like a lot of their terrain stuff and accessories are in here. And then enough unique stuff added onto that pile to make it worth it, even if you don't have any of the kits that the stuff is meant to supplement. So you want a whole pack of water elementals and the big giant water elemental to lead them. They got that. Things like that. These are the same STLs that later became their actual models. And it's kind of interesting to see how they had to change them. I think I brought this up before, where you can see like, this is the original art for the mummy snake riders. And you can see that there was a lot more detail on that snake that didn't make it to the final mold because they needed to make it moldable. So they had to like remove some of the loose bones and simplify the sculpt. But if you want the super pretty version that they weren't able to make into physical production, you can get the original now.
That's cool.
They've also released one cool thing as a loyalty reward, is that one of the things that Mantic does, a specific kit that is really awesome, is they make a very cheap giant kit, and this giant is an actual foot tall.
We have talked about this, and it's pretty epic for sure.
Right. And then they've released a whole bunch of modifier kits to take that and turn it into a shadow giant, or a lightning giant, or a frosty giant, and all sorts of things. And they've been releasing those kits as 3D printable. Well, as a loyalty reward, they just said, here's the giant. You don't even need to go buy the giant kit anymore. Print all the giants you want. Here's the base giant. And so sweet. It's fun. So their version of 3D printing supports their physical games. So you still need to, if you wanted to play in the Mantic world and stuff, there's still a lot of reason and that you would just buy the physical models and still produce that, and it's sort of a supplement. So they're not undercutting their physical sales, they're just enriching their world.
I think that's a really good way to do it, and I feel like more and more companies that are smaller would definitely benefit from this kind of thinking, where I think there are people who are too nervous, and I know sometimes people get a licensing agreement, you can't do anything about it. I'm just really glad that Modiphius somehow wrangled their licensing agreements to allow it, because it's brilliant. So
that is crazy. When the second I saw I could print James T. Kirk, I was like, what the heck?
And then you can have a whole mirror universe.
Paint little goatees on half.
Yeah, just reverse the STL and put little goatees on them all. It'd be amazing. I actually would want the Discovery stuff, because man, the Mirror Universe stuff in Discovery is crazy cool. I don't know if you've watched.
Unfortunately, I didn't see any Discovery stuff. I saw a kit. There's like some kit bash kits to like make your own Starfleet officer kind of sets in there.
That means we don't have Kelpians though, and I really like Saru, so sad.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of room out there, and I'm glad we're seeing, of all the companies we mentioned, none of them quit. All of them are still going and still doing it, and it looks like intend to keep doing it. Like I said, Mantic, when I at Adepticon, was saying they were very happy with what it was doing. It was doing what they wanted it to do, which is support their games and ease off the pressures to do some things that have very, very niche market, and still be able to provide that as a solution without it being without having to do that through expensive means.
Right. Teeny mustaches.
Yes. So which companies do you think should jump in? Like, is there any companies out there that just seem obvious and this would be perfect for them?
It's more the companies that don't have lines. Like, you have somebody big like Wizards, they can obviously support Dungeons and Dragons 5 ways till Tuesday, right? But I look at some of the smaller companies and I think, what if some of those companies got into that space and had more of that niche availability. Like, I don't know, have we seen anything for, like, I know there's generic stuff for Cyberpunk, but has like Cyberpunk Reg, do they have anything official yet?
I don't know.
That seems like a good one, because again, a lot of people are going to run that theater of the mind, but a lot of people aren't. I wish Marvel would do more with their games, their various games. And for that matter, HeroClix also, I know, like it's the thing, right? WizKids is going to do their thing, but why not do modifiers, right? Why not do kit bashing kits or basing stuff? Like anything that would just go with it, or printable dials. Like for custom minis would be cool. Like that one's like a miss to me too. Why not have a generic balancing math to build out your own custom HeroClix, so you can play your character from your other, your RPG, and then move it over into HeroClix? Those sort of things, especially as these lines kind of lose popularity and aren't. I mean, I know HeroClix is still in production, but like I feel like the community of HeroClix is like on the drop, where we have things like, what's it called? Is it HeroQuest we're talking about that came back? HeroQuest? HeroScape coming back with a new edition. Like, I was at my LGS the other day, and like more people were playing HeroScape, which was still technically, like, they haven't released that new system yet, but people are like hyped for it, right?
I mean, it's a fun freaking game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And they were using the really like old, like those little hex tile lock things that
Mhm.
like have, tons and tons of like old used beat up ones and people that clearly like found on secondhand or whatever. I'm like, give them printable files so they can mod out that, right? Like the terrain for it. Again, it just seems like an easy ad. I don't know.
I mean, it does. Absolutely. And gosh, they're very resistant to it though, because I think WizKids is going to be one of the other ones that's going to be like, I think, very late to the party because
Right.
they have the least incentive to do this.
Hmm.
Because,
Hmm.
and they don't even have the problem Warhammer has where the pricing is a problem because all of WizKids stuff is available usually fairly acceptable prices. Even the big stuff is like I saw the new version of the Colossal Red Dragon at my LGS,
Hmm.
and $70 is not a bad price for a big freaking painted dragon.
I mean, it's pushing it, but yeah, I would circle back though and say they need to do something about Warlock because as terrain goes, it's hard to use. The clips are brittle, and I
Mm,
think if they did some 3D printing support for Warlock, like some trays or some other things, because like if you had like a frame that you could just set your rooms into, you wouldn't have to use those clips, and those clips are just. You either have to wear them out and get them to the point where they're on the verge of breaking so that they're easy to use, or like I have broke so many of them, and yeah, I don't know. I think that is a place that WizKids could definitely grow. It's the support products, right? The extra dials for your hero clicks, the terrain pieces for Warlock. I can see just like a lot of potential to kind of add some peripherals and stuff they wouldn't even have to put that much work into. A and B stuff that they would be able to monetize and probably get a decent flow through just off of people who want to add that little extra thing, right?
mm.
I don't know. Who else?
I want them to, but it's one of those things. It's like I want you to,
Right.
but I understand why you don't.
Well,
I would love to see. I'd love to see Fantasy Flight do some of this because they have failed several times to crack this market
mhm.
and had a couple of good successes. And then they leave behind a corpse of dead popular games that could still have some support if they just had like a time delay
The
release.
wreckage
Like,
of their
yeah.
licenses they lose and everything. Yeah.
Well, they still even have the licenses. They just don't put the games out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I going back to Marvel one more time too, and this
Mhm.
is we're never going to hear the end of this from me, people. So just get used to it.
Mhm.
Customizable superhero minis also for their 616 RPG,
Mhm.
which you would have a very hard time printing, everybody's special snowflake of a character for a supers game. But man, like if we had a kit for that, just some good capes, some good accessories, whatever, some good poses, you know, I'm still kind of dumbfounded that we don't have like a good and this okay as a Patreon and as a tribe we've seen this fail over and over again, right? Where someone comes in, they do it for a few months and they just disappear. And there's a
Right.
couple people still putting out there. I think like is it C27, C something, still doing some, but usually they do more like fan art stuff. And I think if we could see something more generic that was attached to a license like Marvel, that
You
maybe
know who?
it would stay.
You
What's
know
that?
who is primed to do this?
Who's that?
That needs to just do it. So who owns the license now? I think Sony, on which makes it Daybreak, owns the
Mm-hmm.
license. Um, City of Heroes exists and has, and now they're it's back kind of officially. They've endorsed a fan server, given them full permission to run the fan server and assets
Right.
to do so. And it has the only successful customize a superhero that I think can make almost literally any hero in it. That
It's really good.
if they were just put a team out there to make these a 3D printable Eldritch Foundry type situation, and also the City of Heroes STL creator, oh my goodness, so many people would use that and play it just for kicks.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Mhm. Like, half
Yeah,
the fun of City of Heroes is just sitting there in the character creator with its thousands of options, making custom heroes.
for me, it was customizing power effects. That
Oh,
again, not surprising. What do I always ask for people to make? Spell effects
spell
and
effects.
power effects. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Because I love messing around with that. You can get some really neat stuff
Hmm.
like the Moose Strikers that were all like bound up and like hovering in their lightning. That would be such a cool mini. Oh my gosh, it'd be really cool.
Oh. Well, speaking of, that leads me to shout outs.
Yeah.
Because a related shout out,
Yes. Yes.
Sentinel City from the Dragon's Rest.
Oh.
It is a 3D printable superhero city.
Oh, nice.
So Dragon's Rest is a wonderful terrain creator. Usually focuses on fantasy, has done some sci-fi stuff, but so now they've done a Kickstarter for Sentinel City, which is a completely modular city set for your superhero / modern needs. They're
Nice.
definitely leaning into the Crisis Protocol Hero Clicks.
Is it the same scale?
Yes, it is absolutely the same. It's 32 millimeters or 45 millimeters. It's 3D printable. It's any scale you want it to be.
Sure. You can modify it.
They've already unlocked like a ton of the stretch goals too. They've got these like completely modular tile sets. But the first stretch goal was actually how about some just pre-built rooms to get these out quick. So it's definitely like a build your custom city the way you want it to kind of situation, and less of a here's a bunch of buildings. But at the same time, it's cool. There's not a lot of support for this kind of thing in the world, and it looks
No,
really
I love
nice.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And imagine getting to play on this at your local game store every week if you played Crisis Protocol or Hero Clicks. I mean, just like,
Sure.
isn't that awesome?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted more modern terrain anyway, and like I would probably end up using it for weird stuff like TMNT or Marvel Superheroes Classic meets Masterminds. Like I could think of tons of things I'd use it for. Starwind is asking us, yep, you pulled it up. What's your usual ratio? Tenacious with standard resin, 10% for me.
It depends on what I'm mixing it with. If I'm mixing it with Elegoo ABS or any cubic ABS, 10% is good. But I've recently changed to 20.
Ooh.
And 20 has made for some really invincible models. So you are spending to get those invincible models because you're going through twice as much Tenacious. But boy, am I really happy with the results. Like some super durable stuff.
And I'm going to just toss out really quick that this is eyeballed for me. I know that's going to probably make some of you cringe, but like close enough to 10% seems to be close enough for working for me.
Sure. And I'm the opposite. I get the little measuring
you do.
cups. And I'm like 100 milliliters in here and 900 milliliters of this. And exactly 10%, exactly 20%. It's fun.
That's adorable. I like it.
You had a shout out.
I do. Anybody who's been listening to the show for a while knows in the plethora of subs that I've had, I've almost always maintained a subscription to Clay Cyanide. Clay Cyanide does like a mythological themed thing usually every month, but usually also does like a factions release. And this is the first time I've ever seen them do Mind Flayers. And you know me and my Tentacle Boys. This is their Elder Brain.
Frightening as heck.
Very different. This looks like an Elder Brain that's going to come kick your butt. Usually the Elder Brain is just kind of like sitting in a puddle and is like, you know, it's swimming, tadpoles rushing around it and everything. And it's very passive looking. This looks like it's going to kick your butt. I have another favorite that we've shown on a show before that was like, had tentacles and stuff. It was a little more active looking, but this one actually looks like it's going to kick some. And I like that. But the other models, it's got a whole set of decent Mind Flayers with it. Very, very classic. They very much feel very second ed leaning to early 3.0 artwork styles. Very spoopy. Very, very classic mean Mind Flayers that don't look too fragile. One of the things I remember early on is a lot of times Mind Flayers physically were supposed to be like very like weak and like, you know, like lerpy, and I kind of am glad that they've moved sort of away from that. I think back to, I want to say it was like a dungeon there's a prison break dungeon thing, and there was like a big swole mind flayer breaking out of prison, and he's like hanging the guard off, and he's like all tentacles are covered in something, and they're like he just looks like he's gonna like throw down, in addition to like destroy your mind, right? And I really loved that visual, and these are more in that vein.
Nice.
So very cool. And that's just part of their normal Patreon release. Also, it's not just like a standalone thing. So,
got another?
No, that was really my big one for the week. Obviously, I think Scott was in here. I think Scott's campaign still has one more week going.
Nice.
2 more weeks. But yeah, check that out. It is on BackerKit directly. So that would also, Scott's a friend of the show. He's not obviously sponsoring this. This is just pure love for all the horror that Scott gives me and scares Param with, including his very terrified pseudo Hydra dragon monster thingy. That's kind of the main thing. Buff Mind Flayer, yes. But that's what I've got.
I want to shout out to a free thing on cults of all places.
Free cults thing. Let's go. What is it?
Nap King has released a really cool idea of a thing.
Oh, neat.
It is a movement measuring chain ruler. So it's a chain. It's a 3D printable chain with 1-inch segments exactly and very clearly marked where those inches are. So you can print these off at a variety of inch varieties. And remember how I told you how valuable the measuring stick is? It really speeds up play to have like solid measuring devices instead of relying on rulers or tape measurers to do physical measuring. Like, it's why the little combat tools are so valuable, and why when I shifted over to doing my role-playing games gridless, I would just print measuring sticks in the movement distances of the player characters and hand each of them one. So it just made the game go super fast, even though there's no more grid, and it avoids the bogged down type. But sometimes you want to go around corners, so now you can do the same thing. Like get a 6-inch one for your standard D&D character, and now it's a wiggle stick, and you can go all the way. Where can I go? I can go here.
I love this, but as I recall, doesn't 5e not care about diagonals? So there's a little weirdness there, but 5e doesn't actually do the every other square diagonal tax.
I mean, once you go gridless, it stops mattering.
I guess
an inch is an inch. This is also like playing while playing on hexes is always preferable to playing on squares. I've played on hexes maybe 3 times in my lifetime.
I was about to say, outside of like GURPS, I want to say.
Two of those was GURPS games.
Yeah, I was about to say GURPS we had hexes for, but everything else has always been grids.
But like, I remember growing up into the RPGs, and everybody bought the same 1 of 2 battle mats that you couldn't use dry erase on. You had to use wet erase because they were made out of actual vinyl with no texture surface treatments. Either Chessex or who was the other one that makes the mats? Crystal Cast also had one.
Crystal Cast does.
And on one side would be squares and the other side hexes, and everybody had a hex map.
Yep.
Also, hex crawling used to be a bigger deal than it is today.
We had a one-time brown streak that has become like the deterministic log that's always there on every map because it was permanent marker instead, and it just doesn't come off for some reason unless it's like perfectly fused with the coating on the thing. But yeah.
Well, that's bringing us close to the end of the episode. If you want to hear more, you can find us on printyourgames.com. And you can also find us on YouTube as well as all the other socials. And you'll find the links to that at printyourgames.com. If you want to support the show, the best thing you can do is give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube, the best thing you can do is like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
I'm Kristen Sowards, also known as Seventh Mastery, and don't forget to use your screen protector.